Pleased to be joined now on the Newsline by Andrew Handel. Mr. Handel is Director of the Education and Workforce Development Task Force at ALEC. ALEC is the American Legislative Exchange Council. Mr. Handel, good morning. Thanks for the time.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Tell us about ALEC. Who are you folks and what do you do?
Sure. Yeah. So we are the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC for short. We are the nation's largest nonpartisan membership organization of state lawmakers and private sector members who come together and work on creating the best policies for the states and putting those out there.
I apologize for mispronouncing the acronym ALEC, A-L-E-C. All right, so give us a sense of education in this country, and this is triggered because, first of all, this is National School Choice Week. Second of all, last week you released the annual Index of State Education Freedom. Tell us what that report is and why is it helpful for comparison purposes?
Yeah. So the Index of State Education Freedom is it's now an annual publication that we put out every year, usually in January, right before National School Choice Week, as you mentioned. And what we do with it is we rank the 50 states in 5 different categories of education freedom or school choice. So we look at the first category is how well state education dollars follow students, not systems. The second is charter schools. Third is homeschools. Fourth is virtual schools. And then fifth, we look at open enrollment, which is your public school transfers. So we give a letter grade to each of the states in those categories. We rank them, and we create an overall score where Iowa ranks 4th in our 2026 index that just released last week.
How does that compare with Iowa's ranking in previous years over the past 5 or 10 years, let's say?
Yeah. So actually, compared to last year, it's up 1 spot. Iowa did move up 1 spot and got an overall letter grade of an A. So it looks really good. And I think a lot of that is a credit to Governor Kim Reynolds. And, she's obviously made this a top priority of hers. And she's made sure that Iowa's not only, getting some of the best education freedom programs out there and making sure these options are available, but she's also done a phenomenal job of making sure Iowa is one of the first states leading on the cutting edge of this. So I think it's a major credit to her and the state policymakers who have helped get these bills across the finish line.
Obviously, the education savings accounts have made a big difference in allowing greater school choice, greater options for families. That obviously played a role in the rankings as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the Students First Education Savings Account program in Iowa is one of the best programs in the country. And I'm sure, as you know, next school year will be the first year that it goes fully universal. So any student in Iowa can apply to participate. And with that, I know the state is expecting to see a good jump in participation. Already this year, I believe it's 27,866 students are already using the program. State officials expect that to jump 61% up to 45,000 students for the next school year. So awesome to see, not only the universal aspect of it, but also great to see that, parents in Iowa are taking advantage of it.
They very much are taking advantage of it, and the folks in traditional K-12 education have been bemoaning that fact. They were issuing warnings before the ESAs were put into place that they'd lose all this money and would hurt the schools, etc. So now they're running deficits, much larger deficits, by the way, than the amount of money they lost. So they can't blame it all on ESAs, to be sure. What does that tell you when you've got all of these families maximizing the available funds for education savings accounts, not just in Iowa, but other states?
Yeah, exactly. I think in so many school districts, there does tend to be quite a bit of bloat. There's a lot of administrative positions and, non-instructional, non-classroom related spending that goes on, which, almost all of it is wasteful and would be much better used in the classroom. But exactly to your point, if the public school, the traditional public school is the best option for the student, then parents can still pick that. And, they'll pick that and the money stays right there with that student. And the other thing that's important to note with these ESA programs is we're only talking about the state portion of money. So the local tax money that funds the schools, it stays right there even if the student uses the program. So even though the school district no longer is responsible for teaching that kid, they still get to keep the local money and usually the federal money as well. So what actually ends up happening in a lot of cases is per student spending goes up. So we actually see more resources remaining for the students that are there. So I think it's a net positive for public schools.
ALEC is the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC.org. That's ALEC.org. And if you go right there to the main page, you'll see a button where you can click on the State Education Freedom Report that we're speaking about with our guest, Andrew Handel, Director of the Education and Workforce Development Task Force at ALEC. So when we're talking about open enrollment from one K-12 to another, Iowa just gets a C. That's not, it's passing. That's nice. But what are we deficient in that could help us get a little extra credit and a better grade?
Yeah, definitely. It's a great question. So there's two types of open enrollment. There's so all open enrollment involves public school to public school transfers. So the first type is having a student go to a different public school outside of their school district, and the other type is allowing them to transfer to another public school within their school district. And so when it comes to allowing students to transfer to another public school district, Iowa actually does really well. In that particular aspect of this, Iowa gets a perfect score. But where the policy lacks right now is on the within district transfers. Right now, the state doesn't require school districts to have those policies in place. It doesn't, there's not a whole lot of transparent reporting on how many seats are available and how many students used open enrollment. And then there's also some cases where parents can be charged tuition, even though they're transferring from one public school to another. And so those are the three things that we highlight: the within district transfers, the transparency, and making sure parents are never charged tuition when they're going to another public school.
What are some of the trends nationwide that you're seeing in education? Obviously, Iowa now, according to this new national ranking for education freedom, number 4 in the nation. But what are some trends that we're seeing in just more broadly?
Yeah. So I think the biggest trend that we've been seeing over the past couple of years really is states are not only creating new programs to make sure funding follows the students, but they're also opening them up to every single child within their borders. And I think that's been the biggest change. And of course, Iowa was one of the first states to get that done with the Students First program. So, I think we're going to continue seeing that push. We're already up to 17 states that have these universal programs in place. But we're also seeing states pursue expansion in other areas like charter schools and virtual schools and of course, those public school transfers, and just breaking down barriers and empowering parents to make the best decision for their kids.
There has been a lot of pushback, as there often is when you try to change a system that's entrenched. There's been pushback by those who are perhaps different agendas, let's just say. Do you find that the parents are able to be as an effective or more effective lobbying force in a lot of areas of the country as opposed to the entrenched teachers union?
Yeah, I think we definitely see that. And of course, these programs that we've been talking about and opening up these other learning options are a phenomenal way to empower parents. It's one of the taglines we have in our report is, empowering parents to make the best decision for their kids. So, I think it definitely gives parents a little more authority, having those options. And that's really all it's about, right? It's about recognizing that there's no such thing as one school that can possibly be the best fit for every kid. And, two kids can live on the same street. One might learn best in a nearby private school, and the other one might learn best at their local public school. And so we think that the parents of both those kids ought to be able to make that decision. And state level policies ought to be able to support that.
I'm interested in the task force that you're director of. It's titled Education and Workforce Development. And that's something that I think has taken increased focus. That's the workforce development part. We've talked about it a
Hmm.
lot here in the state of Iowa. We talk about it on my Iowa Business Report program. What's the proper role of education, K-12 education, as we look toward workforce development? Because to your point, there's not one plan for everybody, but I'm of an age that they just assumed everybody should go to college. That was best for everyone. And that led to an awful lot of student debt and an awful lot of people who can't do things with their hands.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the workforce development piece because that is so important. And, I think especially under the Trump administration, there's been, a prioritization of not only school choice, but career and technical education as well. So that's what I would emphasize. The Trump administration has made steps to open up state 529 programs to allow parents to spend that money on career and technical education beyond just a traditional four-year degree. And we're also seeing a push amongst the states as well to allow high school students to take more career and technical testing. So, right now, high school students, they usually just take the ACT or the SAT. Those are built for traditional four-year degrees, right? But what about the students that have, been taking shop class and, know that they don't want to go for that four-year degree. They want to go for a career and tech route. Giving them some state assessments to help make that transition easier as well. So definitely seeing a big emphasis on the workforce development piece as well.
STEM or STEAM, depending on how they define it, CTE, all of these things are vital. And again, I often focus on the manufacturing or the work with your hands kind of thing. Those are really good occupations for really bright people who have the aptitude. I don't have the aptitude, so I sit here and talk. But I marvel at those who can, fix things, do things, and so
Yeah.
there's an enhanced focus, I think, is there not, on that as being a very valuable career, fulfilling, and great contribution to society.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And exactly like you mentioned, a lot of those jobs where you work with your hands, they're in pretty dire shortage. There's lots of available employment opportunities in those areas. And so, as a consequence of that, simple supply and demand, those jobs typically pay a pretty good wage coming right out of a career in tech school. And, not to mention that a lot of those programs, you can do in 2 years instead of 4. So, it really is amazing. I mean, for students that want to pursue that path, they absolutely should, because it's not only going to be, it's going to take less time, it's going to cost them less money, but they can make just as much money as a starting salary in those positions because they are so short of qualified employees. So, yeah, it's a huge piece, and states are definitely emphasizing it.
If you go to ALEC.org, ALEC.org, that's the website for the American Legislative Exchange Council, all manner of great information right there on the main page, including what we've been talking about, the ALEC Index of State Education Freedom, where Iowa's number 4 in the nation. There's also a nice subtle donate button in the upper right-hand corner of the main page if you are of means and are so inclined. Mr. Handel, thanks so much for the informative conversation. I appreciate it. Hope you come back again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
You bet. Have a great day now. Andrew Handel is director of the Education and Workforce Development Task Force at ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC.org, and he joined us on the Newsline live on Newstalk 1540 KXEL, where Iowa comes to talk.